So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Vital Conversations, Dialogues on Living and Dying Well. I'm Kim Adams, your host. I'm also a certified professional coach, and I work in the end-of-life arena, helping people that really want to be the author of the last chapter of their life. So that could be someone that's looking to see that, they have a terminal illness or a life-limiting illness, and they're interested in kind of planning the rest of their time. It could be the baby boomers who are saying, things are getting up there in age and really want to plan. Or it could be a younger person who's really consciously aware to say, I want to get things in order for myself and for my family, to really provide that gift and to really live well now. So thank you for joining us. And we're in for a real treat tonight. Our guest, Peg Lorenz, will be talking with us about home funerals. And my sincere appreciation for you joining us again tonight, given the glitch that we had last week, that I apologize that we were not able to come in live into the live room. So I appreciate the fact that many of you are joining us live tonight, and also those of you that will be watching the replay. So just a couple of housekeeping issues before we get started. So you'll notice on the right-hand side there is a chat function, and that's your way to communicate with Peg and I, to ask any questions, and hopefully you will have tonight, and also any comments. So I'll periodically be checking out the chat and seeing what things are coming in. So take a moment now and just type in, let us know where you are listening in from. And also, let us know your experience with home funerals, or if you know anything or have any experience, or have done a home funeral or have participated. So just let us know and keep those comments coming in the chat, and I'll be checking on those. As usual, this is live technology, so we certainly do not foresee any problems now that we are live. But certainly, if you experience any audio or video issues, probably 9 times out of 10, if you just refresh your browser. I did put a note in the sticky on the right-hand side as well that this is being recorded on YouTube. So certainly feel free to click on that YouTube link to watch it live. And if you have any questions or comments, you can come back to the page and type them in, but that will be crystal clear for you. So go to that YouTube link if you're having problems and refreshing your browser doesn't work. So. Okay, so let me just grab Peg's bio here. And Peg Lorenz. Peg Lorenz is a home funeral guide and educator. She's on the board of directors of the National Home Funeral Alliance, and she's actually the chair of their legislative committee. Peg has over 20 years of experience with hospice care, and she has a certificate in end-of-life care from the University of Southern Maine. She completed a training taught by Crossings, Caring for Our Own at Death, a resource center for home funeral care. She's a member of the Threshold Choir, which is a volunteer group that sings at bedsides of people who are dying. And Peg brings a wealth of information tonight and stories and experience from her time as a home funeral guide. So let us welcome Peg. Welcome, Peg Lorenz.
Hello, hello. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. And the second time around is the charm, so this is going to work great, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Great. So yes. Peg, it's not every day that, it's not every day that folks go into the home funeral industry and business. So talk to us a little bit about your story and how you got into this.
I had been a hospice volunteer for about 25 years. So basically back in the early 90s, I saw an ad in the paper that said they were looking for hospice volunteers. And so I had never thought about it, and it just struck me as something that would be really interesting. And so I started there. And over the years, I was a respite volunteer, meaning that I would sit with the dying person while the primary caregiver went off to go to dinner or to, go to a movie or something and just take a break. So I got to spend a lot of time with dying people. And sometimes when I got really close to a family specifically, they would invite me after the death to the memorial service. And I would say, so how did it go at the end? And I started to hear some families say that They loved hospice, but at the moment of the death, hospice actually stops getting paid, and so they have to leave. And the families were feeling kind of abandoned at that point, and we're just told, oh, just go call the funeral home. And so in the middle of the night, a funeral director would come in and zip their loved one into a plastic body bag and whisk them away. And for some families were telling me that this was a horrible moment for them. It was extremely traumatic. And I kept hearing it enough that I finally started to say, what the heck is going on here? Why are we being so harsh at the end of this traumatic experience? And I Googled around and I figured out that you could get some training and that help families to keep the body at home after death. And it was, and so I just started to get real committed to giving people a choice. You know, they can call the funeral home, that's fine, but if they're not ready, they shouldn't be forced to. And so the home, I call it a home wake, is really what is so, what I find so beautiful and so special about this work, is allowing families the time to settle after the death and just be with their loved one for a little more time. So that's how I got involved, through hospice. Yeah.
Great. Great. Wow. You know, and I love what you say, because these webinars are all about providing options and choice. And this is not a webinar bashing funeral homes. If anything, I know you'll talk later about, you know, the role that a funeral home can also play with these home wakes and home funerals.
That's right.
So really, it's about helping people to see there are options. I certainly, for one, did not even know that there was such a thing as a home funeral. So for me, the point is to really bring these educational opportunities for people so that they have choices, so that they have the opportunity to say, you know, this works for me, that doesn't work for me. And without knowing our options, we certainly don't have a choice. So that's really great. I love that you have said that. So tell us a little bit, Peg, about the history of home funerals.
Oh, well, you know, we used to care for our family members since the dawn of time. That family groupings and communities would take care of their own from birth, educating them, and then through death, because there was nothing else that you could do. You just had to take care of each other. And then what changed was during the Civil War, when for the first time, many tens of thousands of young men were dying, sometimes on the same day in a battle in the South. And they were being buried in mass graves. And the northern families began to raise a ruckus about wanting to have their sons come back to the North for a home funeral. They wanted their sons' bodies back. And so a doctor in the South invented embalming, basically, by taking all the fluids and organs out of the body and inserting chemicals. And it kept the body preserved just well enough for them to get back north. And so embalming became, and it was Abraham Lincoln, that was when he died, his body was taken through, I don't know, 13 states or something, and hundreds of thousands of people saw him on a railroad train going from DC to Illinois, and he was embalmed, and he was shown to people all through the United States. And so he was like the biggest advertisement for embalming, and it became a real status symbol. And then people began to want it and demand it, and it took over our whole after death care in a way that we're ourselves in Canada are the only countries that regularly do embalming. No other country really does it. It's and I want it to be clear about this, that there is no rational reason for embalming now.
Mm.
It was only in those very unusual circumstances back in the Civil War. There's no reason in terms of germs or bacteria. There's no health problems. So there's no reason except to create a artificial face for people. They call it a memory picture or something, the funeral industry. But otherwise, there's no reason for it.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So that's how it started, and now it's just become a part of a convention. But when you talk about traditional, I have this sign right here. It says, "Caring for our own after death, reclaiming an old tradition." That's what I feel like our movement is about, reclaiming a tradition that we've lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So what you're saying is that it had been, and then given the kind of the war, really was the turning point. Yeah,
That's right. That's right. And we lost it. And I think we lost it at our peril, because I feel like we have become so distant from death that it has not served us as a culture. I think we so much of our culture is so fearful of death, whereas other older cultures come to terms with it in a much more, loving way than we do. We just want to pretend that death doesn't exist, and
Mm-hmm.
it has terrible consequences for our culture.
Sure.
Yeah. Can I just insert here about home funerals, because I just want to make sure that people understand what we're talking about here. I use the term home funeral as an umbrella term because it includes the home wake and the final disposition, which is cremation or body burial. And I spend a lot more time in my education and with families dealing with the home wake part, because once you get to the burial cremation, everybody knows that and they get that, but it's that keeping the body at home that is so, for some people, it's just really scary and really, it's the fear of the unknown. So I spend a lot more time. And I also think that the emotional benefit, comes from that time in the home. So that's what we're talking about.
Peg, talk a little bit about that. What are some of the benefits that you've seen, and maybe even share some of the stories of the families that you've worked with that have noticed those benefits or shared those benefits with you?
Yeah, well, they're just tremendous. I mean, they're for people who want to do this, it's like a miracle. I mean, they have a gut feeling for the most part that they know what they don't want. They don't want that public embalming in the funeral home with the wake, standing in line, shaking hands. Like, they've been to that, and they just have this gut feeling that that's just not right. And so when they find me and they find this movement, they are thrilled, first of all, that there is a choice and that they can actually do something different from that. So they also understand, although it's not usually an issue for most people, but it can be, is the economics of it. So there's a tremendous benefit around, the typical conventional funeral costs between, $8,000 up until, it's not unheard of for families to have to spend $20,000-$30,000 for a funeral with a body burial. The costs just keep going up and up and up. And a home funeral could be, with a cremation, could be as under $500. I mean, literally. So, but again, the emotional benefits, I'm sure, that the things that are so important. I'll tell you, the end result of these 1, 2, or 3 day experiences for families, they tell me across the board, is that they're less afraid of death afterwards. And imagine if our culture could have that experience and be less afraid, how the ripple effect would be in our culture. But in terms of other, I think some of the benefits are that it's under our control. The family gets to decide every minute of every day what is going to happen. It's not, usually with funeral homes, there's a time for grieving, the time for visitation and all that. Families really appreciate that they can have a day just quiet. Nobody comes. They just get to spend time with and a lot of times the body itself is in a back bedroom, very private. And so the family has their life, and they go in quiet moments and they sit and they cry or they pray or they sing. And sometimes this happens in the middle of the night too. So a rhythm develops where the family gets to experience this time, which, if the body gets whisked away, is like shocking, and they don't get to process the sadness and the grief. And believe me, people are going to grieve for a long time after a death, but we really believe that there's a healthy way to start this, and that these days where and I have to say that I have felt it, the presence of the spirit that still seems to hover around, and again, not being able to experience that, I think, is a tremendous loss. And so families report that they come together naturally, they tell stories, they just do have beautiful rituals that just come organically. Like what I do is I just come to support them and educate them through, in terms of the washing the body and the dressing of the body. But I mostly stand back and just watch. I feel so blessed to be a witness in this most intimate time for a family. I'm just amazed endlessly that I get to be there to just share those moments with them. It fills me up. I walk like I'm lighter for people, because people would think, oh, this is so sad, this is so horrible, how can you do this? It fills you up because there's such love and there's such beauty in that home for those days, and there's such respect, and the kind of a sacred atmosphere gets created that it gives me goosebumps just thinking about the things I've seen and the people I've met through this work.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So what I'm hearing also, and a lot of folks these days are being cared for at home, being cared for through hospice. And what I'm hearing you say is, after death, just a beautiful transition of being able to continue that care and that love and that gift to your loved one through that, in addition to beginning the grief process yourself, or maybe continuing it, because if someone is, terminal, life-limiting, then the grief has obviously started before that, but just to continue that beautiful transition seamlessly, as opposed to, like you said, maybe kind of the whisking a body away, and then all of a sudden there's that kind of glassy-eyed, just kind of deer in the headlights, like what happened. Yeah. How beautiful that you get to be a witness to that. Yeah.
I know. It's really true. But to me, every home funeral is kind of a miracle that it happens, because there are often forces arrayed against it happening, kind of like a home birth was like 30 or 40 years ago. I really see this as a continuum of that kind of home movement, where women started to say, I think it was probably the baby boomers, who said, hey, we want to give birth at home. Why do we have to go to a hospital under those lights and in the and so they began to demand it. And I think there was some pushback from the medical community. People said, oh, you can't give birth at home. Oh my God. As if people hadn't been doing it. Women hadn't been doing it for thousands of years, right? And so I see this in the same continuum where, home birth, home schooling, home hospice, and then home death. And I believe that the baby boomers will be the ones to question, as we have our whole entire life, why? Why should we pay that amount of money? Why should we give control over to these strangers and professionals? We can do it ourselves. So I think it's a miracle right now because it's new.
Yeah.
And so the institutions that we have to deal with aren't familiar with this. So if a loved one dies in a hospital or a nursing home, and you want to bring them home to have a home wake, you'll mostly probably hit some resistance. And it won't be that they're bad people. It's because they don't know and they're scared. So I think of a lot of our home funeral families these days as trailblazers. Like they're dealing with institutions, and I support them, but they're the ones who have to make the phone calls, and they may have to be persistent. Even grieving families, imagine, have to struggle to make this happen, and it's very sad. But I warn them ahead of time that this is probably going to, happen. And what we try to do is, like just recently, I had a home funeral where I met with a family, and then I actually went right to the town hall of that town. It happened to be Waltham. And I met with the town clerk, and I said, look, this is happening. You're going to have to process some paperwork that you've never done before, because in Massachusetts we just instituted the electronic death registration system, and it's changed a lot. So I think if you lay the groundwork, like this woman was very grateful to hear that, and she got prepared. She like read her manuals, and she was getting all ready to help this family file the death certificate. So because normally that's what funeral directors do. But in our cases, these families are acting as their own funeral directors. That's what they say. When they make a phone call, they say, no, I'm acting as the funeral director. It's a very powerful statement. It's very powerful for them to say that. And cemeteries and crematories and medical examiners and everybody's just going to have to get used to the fact that families have the right to do this, and and more it's going to happen, and they're going to have to make it happen, help them.
Sure, be on board with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like some of the myths that are out there, maybe touch on some of those. I mean, one being that, we can't act as our own funeral home director. What are some of the other myths that are kind of floating out there?
Well, this has just come up recently. There's a kind of a, how shall I say this nicely? It's a little bit paternalistic, in the sense that, families are they're weak and they're grieving and and we need to take care of them. And I think that is in the best possible way, maybe the way funeral directors feel, is that they really are doing this tremendous service for these very upset people. My experience, however, is that yes, these families are very upset, and they're incredibly strong, and they're incredibly resourceful. And, when called upon, they rise to the occasion to do these tasks and to organize these vigils and things like that. So I think we should give families more credit for the strength that they have than I think we have in the past. Some of the other myths are actually more practical. They're myths about the dead bodies. We have horrible misconceptions, and based on who knows what. It could be Hollywood, or the zombies, rising from the dead and all that, that are just really not true. And I'm sure there are times when bodies are they're crime scenes or car accidents and terrible situations where there are probably times when a home funeral literally can't happen. That just is not physically possible. But again, in my experience, it can happen after an autopsy, or they can, you know, some families, and especially mothers and fathers with children who have died, really want to see that person, even in death. They need to see that person. And I think we do them a disservice when we say, oh, no, 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 you can't see them. Oh, no, you can't hold your baby after death. Oh, no, it's so important that if people feel the need to do that, that they are allowed to, that they get that right. I just want to then tell us a little bit of a story. How are we doing with time here?
Sure. Yeah, no, we're great. We're great.
The woman who trained me, her name is Beth Knoxs, and she came to this work when her family had a little fender bender, or a little minor accident, and this was many years ago, over 20 years ago now, where the front airbag, passenger seat airbag deployed, and it killed her 7-year-old daughter in the front seat. This was before we knew that people of a certain height should not be sitting in the front seat, passenger seat. So she was brain dead immediately. And Beth tells the story that she went to the hospital, and she didn't want to let go of Allison. She wanted to keep her, and they kept saying, no, 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 we got to take her here, take her there. And of course, Beth was, beyond distraught. And at some point in this horrible couple of hours in the hospital, somebody said to Beth that she could take her daughter home, her daughter's body home. And it just, in that moment, Beth will describe that it was exactly the right thing. This was exactly what she needed to do. And the hospital said no. So Beth's response was, wait a minute, 2 hours ago, this was my child, this breathing, living, she was in school and this and that. Now you say because she stopped breathing that she's not my child anymore? I mean, she's not mine? So she really fought hard, and eventually, imagine a grieving mother having to fight during this time. Anyway, it finally worked out. And she will be the first to say again, like, these are not bad people who are saying no. They're just completely afraid, and they've never been confronted with this before. And their first response is no.
Right.
So she brought Allison home, and they laid her in her bed, and she tells the story of the second grade class coming by to visit with Allison and say goodbye. And say goodbye to this their friend. And what a healthy and positive and meaningful outcome to this tragedy, having these children be able to say goodbye to their friend, and having Beth have like 3 or 4 just absolutely precious days to say goodbye to her child. So we honor Allison, because Beth again trained me, and she goes around the country to do trainings. So, and her goal is that she doesn't want any other mother to have to go through that, what she went through. So she, and here's a book. I just want to show this because it's a really sweet picture of Allison. There's Allison. We honor her. This is a book called Allison's Gift. And it's about that time, and about her life, and about her short life. And so anyway, so that was just an aside. Some of the myths, again, getting back to the myths about the body, are the smell. I ask audiences, when I do educational presentations, like, tell me your worst fears, and people always talk about the smell and decomposing body, and the bodily fluids. Ooh, the ick factor. So I just address that. It's like, yeah, okay. We're not, I want to be really clear with people. We are not talking about leaving a dead body in a 90-degree room with the doors and windows closed for like a week. That would be irresponsible. And we're talking about a responsible way of caring for a body, and what that is washing the body, which, if someone's in hospice or whatever, they're usually very well cleaned and all that. But so the washing sometimes takes on a real ritual aspect where you put warm water and lavender oil, and the families just wash, and oftentimes, a couple times now, it's happened where some of the family members washing. And in one time where the daughter started to cry, and I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Every time I've touched her in the last few months, she's been in so much pain that it's hurt her when I touched her." She said, "Now I get to wash her, and it doesn't hurt her. And I'll always remember this, that I could touch her now, and it won't hurt her."
Mm.
And so we're talking about a very responsible way of doing this, where we cool the room down. So you put an air conditioner on, or you crack a window, washing them. Here, I even have a picture, just to give you some visuals.
Absolutely, great.
Here's a picture of a family washing a body, again with the warm water. And it's just a beautiful time. People often they'll have music on and candles lit, and they'll tell stories while they're washing the person, and then dressing them. Often they'll have a favorite shirt or some outfit that they've already thought of, so they'll be dressed. In death, the muscles completely relax. So there are times when fluids and things that come out of the body. If the person hasn't eaten or drunk anything for a while, I'd say like 60-70% of the time, nothing comes out. But if it does, it's my experience that families say, "We've been doing this. We've been caring for this person, so it's not a big deal." And you have to think of it as a loving act. I think of all of this as a loving act, even cleaning them and having to put a diaper on them again. It's like it's the last time you're going to do all of this. It's very poignant that anything you're doing is for the last time. And it's very loving. You're doing it because you love the person. And it has that quality of loving care.
Mm.
And so it's those kinds of fears of dead bodies. And I guess I just wish and hope that people can walk through that threshold of fear. If they could and sometimes they do it just because they trust me. They have met me. I have family consultations where I meet with the family beforehand. Sometimes I meet with the dying person there, which, wow, I always leave those meetings a little bit shaken, because I usually give the person a hug at the end of a long meeting, and we both acknowledge that the next time I see them, it will be their body, and it's very intense. Yeah. So anyway, so walking through that threshold of fear, even if it's just trusting me that I'm going to be there with them. Once they do that, their eyes are just transformed. They just open up, like, it's not so bad. I mean, it's the person. Bodies look, to me, beautiful. They look like themselves. Actually, though, in one my very first home funeral, I'll just show you this. She had really awful chemotherapy before she died, and so she was very thin and skeletal looking. So what the family decided is they put a piece of lace over her.
Oh, yes, we can see that.
You can see the lace, and it's just
Yes.
this, you could just see her features a little bit underneath, but it was this, it softened it, and it was absolutely beautiful. Um,
Mm.
and so I would say that once someone is dressed, some people put hats on them and jewelry, um, and they just look beautiful, I have to say. In the rooms,
Mm.
they change the rooms around from all the medical stuff to flowers and candles and things. So there aren't, I mean, if you can just get through those first fears of a dead body, um, it families, they don't often get what the big deal is about after.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Wow.
I
Wow.
know, I
Well,
know.
absolutely. I mean, the what you just described just sounds so beautiful, so loving. And I think a key word you used is this is about responsible. This is
Hmm.
not, as you say, leaving someone, a dead body out for a week. This is really reverence and love and support and just caring for someone. Wow. I mean, just so, so beautiful. So
I
you
know.
mentioned, Peg, that you meet with the families and consult with them. I would imagine, and I love to hear how this may unfold, that maybe not everyone in the family might be on board with a home funeral or a home wake. So talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's actually pretty true a lot of the time if you have a big family. Um, yeah, I had one family where the woman who was dying was in her early 50s, and so she had a teenage daughter who was really angry. This is kind of unusual, but it's happened a couple of times now. Really unusual, really angry. I mean, and she was mad at me for being there. I totally get that. It was, she was just distraught, terribly distraught. Um, but what happened then afterwards is I spoke to her. I did a little bit of a debrief with the family afterwards, and I said, "So how you doing now?" And she said, I just want to tell you that my mother died at like 3 in the morning, and we were so exhausted. We'd been watching every breath, for like 24, 48 hours. You know how it is where people watch the breath. And so she said, after you came and we cleaned and dressed my mother, um, we all just went to bed. We were so exhausted. And she said, if I woke up the next day and my mother was gone, like with the funeral director and stuff, she said it would have been horrible. But I woke up the next day and I knew that I could say goodbye again and again and
Mm.
again, that I could be present, I could be awake, because the night before I was numb and exhausted. She said, I never would have known how important it was that I had her the next day to say goodbye
Mm.
to. So that was sort of an awakening, you can say, of that teenager. But a lot of times families have people who are uncomfortable with the issue, and as long as they don't veto it, and I've never had a family
Uh-huh.
member absolutely veto it. They'll say, "Well, I'm not going to be there for that part. I'll stay down and organize the memorial service or whatever, but I won't be involved in that part of it." And that's fine. I feel like people just have to be how they are. But I've had a brother who was so uncomfortable, he took off, and then throughout those next couple of days, he said, at the end, he said, everybody should do this. I can't believe that people don't do this. This was so perfect and so wonderful. So again, I think a lot of times people start with fear and resistance. I had a couple of teenage boys who just could not bear to see their grandmother, who had lived with them, and they just stayed away. And by the end, I invited them in for one last time to say goodbye. And after they decided to come in, and they, gave me a hug afterwards, and they said, "We're so glad we were able to say goodbye to her." So I
Mm.
think there's people some people have to have a journey through this,
Mhm. Mhm.
and That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Everyone I've ever seen has been changed for the better. I do believe
Yeah.
that. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and that speaks, Peg, to what you're talking about in terms of having the time, and these boys needed to come around in their own time to see their
That's right.
grandma, but they
Yeah,
did. Beautiful, beautiful.
that's right.
Let me just check in. Anyone have questions, comments in the chat? And that's your way of communicating with Peg and I. And actually, I do see something here. Let me read this, Peg.
Sure.
From Jennifer. Can you say more about interactions with the funeral home industry and home funerals? In your experience, is the industry trying to modify what services they offer families who are seeking things like home funerals or natural burials? Thanks for your work and sharing this.
Yeah, great. That's a great question. Um, I think that funeral homes are going to be coming around about this. I think that they, believe it or not, but I think many, many years ago they actually fought cremation. They did not want cremation coming in and being kind of a cheaper alternative. And then cremation just kind of took over, and they have adapted. Obviously, they have their price lists for now for direct cremation. So I think this is the same thing. It's going to start slowly, but they will see that there's a need for this. And I often work with funeral homes to do part of a home funeral. So, for example, a family will want to do the 1, 2, or 3 day home wake, but then they're just ready to be done. And so then I have encourage them, if they're just like they can't do the paperwork, they can't do the transporting, they're frazzled and fried, to call a funeral home and to have the funeral home do what I kind of call the grunt work, which is the paperwork and the transporting to the crematory or to the cemetery. And funeral homes have now price lists where they should be able to give you over the phone. By law, they are required to give you over the phone prices for various services. So, and they can vary. I'll just tell you, when I talk to a family and they want to do this, I say call like 4 funeral homes, because the difference in price can be thousands of dollars for what you. I recently had a family. They charged $3,200
Hmm.
for paperwork and transportation. It was outrageous, and that to me is really unethical, because that means they probably earned like $1,000 an hour. I mean, that's how ridiculous that is. So I would call around, and there are in our area, this is Massachusetts. I know personally a couple of really good funeral directors who totally get what we're doing and are really supportive and give very reasonable prices for things. But you still have, and I actually sat next to a family member who was calling funeral homes. I actually heard on the phone the funeral director say, that's illegal. I heard another one say, "Oh, the smell. Oh, you don't want to have oh, you don't want the body in the home." So there are still people out there just
Hmm.
really not aware of the realities, which is that is illegal.
Uh-huh.
It's
Great.
it's legal for a family. It's legal everywhere in the country for a family to keep the body at home or to bring the body home. And keep it there for a number of days. In 9 states, however, uh, and in 9 states, after the home wake, you must have a funeral director deal with the paperwork and transportation. In the other states, family members can do the paperwork and can get a box, um, a, any kind of casket or whatever, and transport in a vehicle to the crematory or to the cemetery. And I want to just show one other thing during these 3 days. One of the things that families can do, and some families have, I mean, the families I worked with, I want to just show this. This is a family that is decorating a box. So the body is upstairs in the bedroom. We brought this box down to the backyard, and as people came to visit, they would go into the backyard and they would just decorate this casket. It's cardboard, so that the cardboard, you can't really decorate pine boxes or anything like that, but this is cardboard, and it is. People put the most beautiful things on these boxes, and it's a real way to, just make your put your feelings into this artwork, and they write on it. They write last loving statements and things, and sometimes in the box, because we then will take the body literally, and I will help them and educate them how to pick the body up safely and put it into the box. And then people will have a little ceremony, and it would be just, it'll just be beautiful. And again, and then if the funeral director is going to come, they come, and the family can even pick up the box and actually put it into the hearse themselves. So from beginning to end, families want to be involved. And so even with a funeral director, you can still insist on being involved as much as possible. Yeah.
Great. Cool. And as you're describing that, it sounds like there's multiple places and ways that people can do what's comfortable for them. You spoke about the boys those young men not being able to see their grandmother. Maybe that was difficult for them, or they didn't want to wash the body, but maybe they would have had a role in maybe decorating, writing on the box.
That's right.
So that there's various roles that people could play throughout this process and still feel like that they're a part of this beautiful ceremony that's honoring the last step in the journey. So
that's right.
Great.
That's right. Yeah. No, it's so different than the kind of forced inactivity and kind of helplessness that you often feel when a funeral home takes over. And again, it's not their fault. I'm not bashing the funeral industry. It's the way it's set up, is that they want to take care of everything. But that means that a family is kind of left, twiddling their thumbs and again, as you say, Kim, doing all these things it is enacting their grief and helping the grief to move through them in a healthier way. We absolutely believe that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a comment here from Pashta. She says, hi Peg. She said it's her experience as well that a fair percentage of people who are not comfortable with a home funeral change their minds significantly after the home funeral, and usually they do become involved, at least in some way. So again, thank you, Pashta. She's up in Canada. So, as you mentioned, the Canadians in terms of doing home funerals, and I know Pashta's very involved up there, but that's her experience as well. And then we have a question from Sis. Thank you, Sis. She says, I could do this. I was my husband's caretaker for almost 2 years. This was 10 years ago. How can I continue and get involved in home funerals?
Wow. Well, and this is a good time to suggest people get on our national website. We have a fabulous website. I'm very proud to say, and if you go to homefuneralalliance.org, all one word. And the reason I'm saying this, Sis, is because it's from that website you'll get all kinds of resources. I mean, you might, depending on where you live, you could find a home funeral guide like me, like right in your same state or, in the same area. And a lot of us do trainings. We do workshops. So I've done many, many workshops where I train regular folks to do what I do. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. This is something that we did for thousands of years, and we can do it now. By the way, you don't need dry ice. We do use a coolant. So again, being responsible, just for you to know that it's something anybody can do. We have this stuff called Techni Ice. They're gel packs, and you can order them through Amazon. They're little gel. They freeze up. We put them in the freezer. And basically, what we do is we take these sheets and we frozen sheets and we put them under the body. And I teach the family all they have to do is rotate these sheets throughout the visual, the home wake time. So, sis, you need some basic information and usually a training. You don't have to go through a big long training. Beth's training was one day. I feel like I train people adequately in a half a day, um, with hands-on and training and everything. So uh, because it's not that difficult. It's not, you know, we know how to do this. Something in our genetic makeup, I do feel like we have some ancient wisdom that we just need to access. And I feel like in a way that people like me are like a bridge from our ancestors to now. Our great great grandmothers did this, so we just have to relearn it, and it'll be there. So there are books. There are some incredible books out there. I would suggest that you. This is a great book called Final Rights, and it has all the states in it and what's those. I said that there are 9 states that are restricted. Has all that information in there. This is our great guy. He's a fabulous guy. This is called Grave Matters by a guy named Mark Harris. He's like our great friend. Um, and so look at our website, our national website. Look at all the resources there are there. Start making phone calls. Find somebody nearby, and that's how we all started. There wasn't much around, even 5 or 6 years ago. So our membership just went from like 200 to, I think we're up to 700 members now, the National Home Funeral Alliance. So definitely check it out.
And I put that website in the chat, Peg, thehomefuneralalliance.org.
Good.
And speak a little bit about the conference that's coming up.
Oh, yeah. We have national conferences, and we have one coming up in October. It's October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, I think, and it's in California. We go around to different areas of the country. We were in Raleigh, North Carolina last time. So this time we're going to be it's just south of San Jose at a beautiful retreat center. And we have fabulous speakers, really wonderful. We have a Buddhist guy, and we've just got all kinds of really amazing activities, and plus the excitement of all of us coming together. And you can imagine this is still a new movement, which I love, being at the beginnings of things. And so there's this energy and excitement when we all get together, because we're all out there. A lot of us were out here by ourselves. I mean, we're not, we don't have a whole lot of folks around us. And so when we come together, it's like family. It like we feel like and we have things for new people to do, to learn, so it's just a wonderful time. All that information again is on our National Alliance website. So I invite all of you to, especially people in that area. If you're in the California Western area, definitely just jump in your car and come on over.
Great.
Yeah.
Another comment from Sis. She wrote a book called Essential Oils in the Dying for those who want to be evolved in some way. Yes, Sis. Jennifer asks, how can we find your book? So if you want to type that into the chat,
great.
Certainly, to let people know about that. So great. So as we're coming kind of up close to the top of the hour, Peg,
Yep.
where do you see the home funerals, home wakes, moving in the next 5 to 10 years? And any final thoughts you have?
Wow. Well, I guess I would say that it's just more and more people are going to be doing this. I really feel like they are. I think I have had, just in my own experience now, I would do like 3 or 4 a year, like not many in the previous years. I think I've done like 6 or more as of this year, in this year. So I can just see it in my own experience that the ripple effect, when people have a home funeral and they have a vigil time where people can come and visit. I mean, even the people who come and visit, they'll stop at the door of the house and they'll go, "Oh my God, they're still here. The body is here." And they'll be a little nervous, but then they'll go back and sit with their friend, um, and they'll come out just beaming in a way, almost again transformed. And so that person, and maybe dozens and dozens who've come to the house that day, will go out and the ripple effect will spread. So every home funeral just has this amazing effect on a community. So I just feel like this is just going to absolutely grow and grow and grow. And I envision a time when I won't be needed, where that grandmothers will pass this information on to their granddaughters, and we will start again with that knowledge. And again, it won't be for everybody, and I'm fine with that. But for the people who this feels right for, they should have this choice. They absolutely should. And I'll just, by way of also ending, I'll just say I do workshops and trainings, and I have gone to other parts of the country to do this. So I love to, if someone will pay my transportation expenses, I will come and not charge a whole lot of money. I was in Florida and New York, and I will do this because I want to spread the word, like Beth Knoxs. We want to, give people this information. So if you have a group and you want me to come and talk, I'm there. I love talking about this stuff. It's so
Great.
important.
And how can people get in touch with you, Peg, to do that?
Website,
Okay.
Peaceful Passage at Home. That's a good place to get me, although I am changing my website. It's a very old, antiquated website, but it's going to be upgraded very soon. But still, it's still working, and it's got my phone number and an email that you can contact me. So it's peacefulpassageathome.com.
Great. And I also put that up on the
Yeah.
chat. So great.
Yeah. And
Great.
always call me. You can call me or write with any questions, because I know when people start talking about this, they get a barrage of like, what? And you can always just call me or email me with questions, and I'm available.
Great. Well, thanks, Peg. This has been really
Thank you.
important information. You really shared a lot of great nuggets, and hopefully for those of you that are listening live, thank you. And for those of you that are going to be listening to the replay, I really hope that you take away a lot of important information, and Peg dispelled some of the real myths, and that this is, as she said from the beginning, reclaiming an old tradition, and that if it feels right, know that there's support out there to do this. So just want to check any last comments or questions. I see that Sis put up her email for people to get the book. Jennifer just has one question. Do you charge for any of your services or guidance to families? Peg, you want to just take that for a quick minute?
Yeah, quick minute. I do ask for donations. I don't charge a lot. I just feel like there's a kind of a gift economy here about how valuable you think the service was. But generally, and I only stay for maybe 3 hours at a family. If they call me in the middle of the night, I'll go, and that's fine. And I'll just stay till the body is kind of settled and everybody's settled, and then I don't have to stick around very long. So a couple 3 hours. I don't think I've ever charged more than between $200 and $400 for, but it's being on call. So
Yes.
there's quite a bit to it. But for me, I have another job, so I don't. This is not a money-making venture for me. This is more a calling and a service that I feel is important. And so it's if I get a little bit of money to keep gas in my car, that's
Sure.
good enough for me.
Sure.
But the different home funeral guides have different ways of dealing with this, but that's just my personal philosophy.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, some type of kind of energy exchange in the system that we have here
Yeah.
is monetary, and so great a donation system. Super. Well, thank you, everyone. Lauren said, excellent, changing the world. Thank you. Sis
Thank you.
commented, this has been so informative. Thank you very much. Thank you for your passion and devotion to this movement. Great. Well, thank you all for being here tonight and joining us. And so just to give you a little preview, next month on June 11th, I will be here with my guest, Christine McMichael, who's the Executive Director of the Hospice and Palliative Care Association here of Massachusetts, and we'll be doing Hospice 101. I know that a lot more folks are engaging in hospice services, and yet that's happening at the very end of someone's life. And so Christine and I will be talking about the multiple benefits of getting hospice involved and the service that they provide and the team approach and the wonderful benefits that someone could get from hospice. So Hospice 101 next month, June 11th. And again, thank you to everyone. Just a few more comments about thanks to Peg. So we appreciate your presence. We appreciate your comments and connection here. And again, this is Kim Adams and signing off for this evening with Peg. And we look forward to seeing you next month on June 11th. Take care of everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.